Welcome to the Hard Skills Show, where we discuss how to develop the most challenging and soft skills to navigate leadership complexities. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, your host and the founder of TowerScope, a social impact company focused on helping leaders and teams navigate the complexities of today and lead better tomorrow. You can find us at gotowerscope.com. And the best way to keep track of all the opportunities is to subscribe to our newsletter. So we're about halfway through season 6. And so I'm doing another one of those client grab bag of questions like I did in seasons 4 and 5. And there's some topics that I get asked so often that I thought it would be a good idea to record a response that folks can go back to often and that I can refer my clients to as an additional supplementary resource. So since season 6 is all about positive politics, workplace politics, since I just published a new Millennials Workbook for navigating workplace politics on Amazon, check it out. I figured we dig in around some of those things in season 6 and today. And today I can also share a few free resources. So today we're going to talk about client, we're going to call her Gloria. And she is trying to help her large department go through a significant change. She's a seasoned leader and has done some fantastic things to set the team up for success. But she's wondering about two things. One, is there any way I could do a better job dealing with this one person, John, who seems to just escalate and escalate this issue, and even sometimes trying to work around me with this issue? Two, a broader question she has is, how do I stick to communicating what makes logical sense about this change when I feel so bad for some of the people when they're coming to me so upset about this? And she kind of added, I feel like this is something I see women struggle with more than men. Is that true? If so, why? How can I let go of that? What are there resources about that? So these are such great questions. And I get these kinds of questions often. So we're going to cover some aspects of change management, which this is a lot about change management, boundary setting. I know maybe you're not hearing much about boundary setting within the scenario, but definitely there. Prepping your people for change and feedback giving. Yes, even in this scenario, feedback giving is important. And there's going to be, like I mentioned, a free resource at the end for those who are committed to sticking around for all of this. So before we get to the client questions and the free resource, I also wanted to share some really, really cool stats and outcomes from 2024 from my social impact company, TowerScope. So looking back at the year is one of my favorite activities because by the end of the year, I sometimes feel lost, like I went off course, or I did too much of the wrong things, or not enough of the right things. And then I look at my initial 2018 business vision at the end of every year, and I look at my past year's goals. And I'm always surprised that I actually did stay true to my goals and surpass them usually, even though sometimes it felt honestly a little meandering. And I think that also reflects how I think and do things. This is probably going to resonate for anyone who has either ADHD or lots of interests or both, since there is an overlap. Neither my career nor how I meet my goals is ever a straight path. I take it like a good vacation. Okay, so as opposed to a trip, and I went on a trip with my family. We call it a vacation. It's a trip. There's an end goal destination, right? As opposed to a trip, a good vacation is where you set some intentions of like some general things you love to experience, maybe a couple of things you want to achieve, right? But then you let your interests and your energy guide how you get there and how much time you spend exploring each random pit stop, and whether you reprioritize each day doing something different depending on your energy level and your interest level, or how everybody's feeling, how you're feeling, right? You can do the same thing for your business. That's how I do for my business. So ultimately, that also means it might take me longer to reach my goals than somebody who is like hyper focused on just a couple of things. But I end up becoming more knowledgeable in more areas that enhance both the journey and the outcome. And I even reach goals I never initially set. But in order to balance my desire to stay focused and on track with my goals while also enjoying the journey of learning, this end of year review process is absolutely critical for me because it creates a ritual to help me slow down, reflect, and hold me accountable to the promises that I've made to myself and to the public. Plus, I get to gather and play with data and create pretty things, two things that I really like to do. So I'm going to, I actually share all of this stuff in my newsletter, by the way. At the end of the year, I share all of this and on my website under the social impact section. So you can check that out. I can share a little bit more if you're watching right now in real time, the video, or later on the recording. I will also share a few of those things. Okay. But a few things I wanted to share is first, I completed the first full year of the Tower Scope Leadership Academy. It feels like it's been a long time since I started it. It hasn't. It's only been a year, and I can't honestly believe it's only been a year. So that feels really good. I also finished 1 year of this podcast, and every week producing new content is kind of crazy. I didn't think that I could do it, but all of this led us to reaching the top 10 global ranking by Listen Notes. So that is amazing. And personally, I was also named a fellow of the American Psychological Association for my national impact and contributions. Only 5% of psychologists reach that status, which again is crazy to even think about. I do want to deeply thank the Society of Consulting Psychologists, which is Division 13 of APA, for nominating and believing in me. I really could not have imagined that for myself, so I'm deeply appreciative of that. I did not intend any of this, right? But well, I should say I didn't intend the APA fellow, and I didn't intend what I'm about to say. As I mentioned, I published a second book, technically a workbook version of the original, but it still took time. And I started writing a third book. I didn't intend any of those things, okay? But all of that was me allowing myself to explore and pursue interests that were not part of the original plan. And I do think that that helped me improve the content that I put out there already, improve how I thought about things, improve my thought leadership. It did a lot, and it all sort of like connects to each other. I also did a lot more leadership group coaching this year, in addition to the kind of one-on-one and team development that I already do. And that actually made me really happy. I really enjoyed the group coaching. Perhaps the thing that I'm most proud about is that every year I evaluate my gender equity commitments. Again, my company's a social impact company, and the goal is to contribute 20% every year in time and money to supporting efforts or individuals around women's career and leadership development and economic development. So I looked at my data. 91% of our hired contractors were women-owned businesses, which is amazing. 45% of them were minority and women-owned businesses. Very happy about that. And with our Leadership Academy, which is already a 100% women identifying community, 40% of them receive scholarships, and 50% experienced a major leadership transition or growth which was aided or supported by the Academy. That to me is probably the most fulfilling. When I looked at that, that was just absolutely incredible. A few other like little tidbits. Some of you might know that I write a blog series called A New Look at Women's Leadership for Psychology Today. In 2023, I published 18 posts, and 3 of them were promoted to essential reads by Psychology Today, which was really validating. I mean, it's not easy to be picked by Psychology Today among all of their contributors for them to choose, what to promote as an essential read. And so in 2023, 3 of them out of 18 were promoted to essential reads. This past year, in 2024, I only published 7 posts. That's the best I could do this year, right? I mean, I did write 1 book, publish it, and started writing a 2nd book. So to really balance that out, right? I only published 7 posts for Psychology Today, but among them, 3 more were promoted to essential reads, which makes me feel like I am getting better and better at identifying important trends and providing value, which is super cool. If you are curious and want to read them, I'm going to share on my screen, but I'm also going to sort of read this off to you. Okay. This is the New Look at Women's Leadership is the blog series that I write. The ones that were promoted were Navigating Invisible Emotional Labor at Work. That was very high interest among people. Another one was why high potential women are ambivalent about leadership. That was a big one. Why high potential women are ambivalent about leadership. And then the final one, technically, it came out December 29th, but I'm going to take credit for this year because I didn't promote it until the following year, which is 2024, the transformative impact of sponsorship. And that was an interview with a sponsorship expert. And that sponsorship expert, Lynn B. Miller, who serves as a leadership solutions partner with the Center for Creative Leadership. And that was a really interesting interview. So I was excited about that reaching essential reads. Okay, so with all of that in mind, this coming year, I would love to continue growing the ecosystem of thought leadership and the social impact work that I do through Tower Scope Leadership Academy, through the podcast, the hard skills, through Psychology Today and book publishing. And like I mentioned, I prefer intentions versus goals because you usually surpass your goals when you have intentions that don't constrain you. So my intention words for the year are streamline, refine, and reach. Streamlining and refining the ecosystem of thought leadership and social impact work while reaching more audiences. So when we come back, I'm going to reflect back, like, what does that mean for me? And then we're going to talk about, like, what does that mean for me in 2025? And then we're going to get into this really meaty client question. Okay. So you are listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern and show up later on your favorite podcast app. If you're joining us today, right now at 5 p.m. Eastern, on the live stream, you could join us on LinkedIn or YouTube, and you can even submit questions that I can answer in real time and simply say hi. Okay. So the best way to keep in track of all these opportunities, of course, is to subscribe to the newsletter. You can go to gotowerscope.com. Otherwise, we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. Now, again, if you are watching live, I'm going to share with you where you can find the information. And then if you're not watching live, that's okay. I'm going to describe it to you. Okay. I was talking about the business reports, the business impact reports, and the scorecards that I create for my company. So if you go to towerscope.com/social-impact, and this is going to be in the show notes as well, the links to these, you can see all about like how I focus on social impact. And then you'll see links to every business review and scorecard since I started, which was, I think, around 2020, and every single year, as well as some awards based on the social impact that my company has achieved. And if you click on, let's say, 2024 business review, you'll be able to see all of the juicy, nitty gritty information about like what I saw as growth, impact, recognition, visibility, influence, momentum, expansion, what I focused on each year. You'll see what I thought, was on track and off track. You'll see changes over time in my revenue and operating expenses. You'll see revenue by service type, my pay it forward impact and how I split it up, and my reflections. What did I learn? What does this mean for the future? And then you'll see the scorecard with, my thought leadership, how I paid it forward, and my gender equity commitments. And all of that is really to be as transparent and hold myself accountable to the things that I promised. I expect companies to be able to do this, and not a lot of companies do this. They don't hold themselves accountable. They're not transparent. And so that means that the goals that they set for themselves, especially when it comes to gender equity and things like that, are going to fall off the radar, and they're not going to meet it. So I, part of this is just showing you that it's easy to do. It's not that hard. We can all do it. All business owners can do it, right? Okay. So let me go back to, like, I sort of reviewed 2024 and my reflections. And as I reflect on what's to come, what's been, sort of developed, and what's happening in 2025, first of all, I continue to be deeply grateful and fortunate to the work that I have with the clients that I love. Talented, introspective people and organizational misfits who want to make a difference and positively impact the world. It looks like I have a message from Jesse, who says, "Hi, Mira, checking in on the road, almost home to take back the engineering back over." Awesome. So Jesse, our engineer, has been, driving and listening, and Emily, who is technically our operations manager, has been helping out. That this is her, initial love and background. And so I have a lot of people who I'm grateful for, and they are some of them, as well as the clients that I work with. And I see my role as helping you connect to your greatest strengths so you can achieve the highest levels of impact I know you have within you to make. And if you haven't had the chance to work with me, but you want to reach out, it's easy. Reach out so we can talk about how I can support you this coming year. There are a few exciting opportunities that I want to share that's coming up. Number one, through our Tower Scope Leadership Academy, I want to have more guest panel discussions and workshops that are open to the public for a nominal fee. So even if you're not a member, you can access it through a nominal fee. Our next one is on upscaling your LinkedIn profile. It's on January 16th. Find out more and register. The information is on LinkedIn or through our newsletter. Number two, more ways to gain affordable, time-sensitive leadership development support. That is the entire point of the social impact arm of our company, is affordable leadership development, accessible leadership development for people who normally do not have access or sufficient support. But I want to add the time-sensitive piece to it. So we're planning to hold about 2 to 3 cohort-based courses this year and trying to be sensitive to people's needs around limited time. Of course, the bread and butter is the one-on-one leadership and career coaching and team development. The one-on-one leadership and career coaching, these are 6 to 12-month engagements. I do have space every year for about 10 to 15 people per year. Spots do fill up by September. And then team development and group coaching. I work with about 5 organizations and teams each year to help them become more effective. Reach out to me if you're interested in that. And finally, advising and consulting. I work with up to 3 leaders and organizations to help them create healthier workplaces and teams, think through change management strategies, and be more intentional and strategic in their work. Today, I'm going to talk about one of those clients and specifically focus on the change management strategies, but combined with some of the sort of personal issues that come up around them. Now, like I said, most of my availability for all the programs and services fill up by September every year. So don't wait. If it's been on your mind, just reach out. Even if you're not ready to start, it's better to reach out now than wait till September, because at that point, my calendar pretty much starts closing up. Okay, let's dive in with the client questions. Super excited about this. There's a new client that I'm working with. We're going to call her Gloria. And she has held multiple leadership positions within academia. So she is a seasoned, experienced leader. And that means she's now leading other leaders and a large department with multiple areas of focus. And she is navigating what personally I think is one of the most stressful transitions for a department, which is transitioning or adjusting space. That's right. I said that, space. It sounds so simple. You're like, what's the big deal, right? But let me tell you, in the academic world especially, transitioning people's spaces is probably like the best Rorschach test you can give. Okay? I did it myself several times when I was in a leadership role. Thank God I had a great team of administrators to help me. And boy, did it bring out people's interesting personalities. I mentioned before on this podcast that people's worst traits, they are leadership derailers, sometimes do not appear until they are under extreme stress. And somehow space transitions fall under the category of extreme stress. And frankly, that doesn't necessarily completely surprise me, because if you think about, like, there's a very old study that offers like a list of, I think, 50 top stressors that even if they're like positive and good in your life, still add extreme stress, moving is one of them. And that is technically moving space. You're moving from where you are to a different space, both housing wise and location wise. So going back to like an employee moving spaces, and also like how to think about extreme stress and how these derailers come out. I use several assessments like the Hogan Assessment Suite, the CDR Assessment Suite, the DISC, and other tools to look at people's strengths, but also to see what could happen when they are at their worst. And these things can be real blind spots for folks. Or sometimes they are strengths, but then overutilized. People overuse their strengths sometimes when they're under high stress, thinking if I just keep digging in with my best strengths and the things that always work for me, I will get what I want. That is not true, but people believe that. So with space issues, if you've either been told, great news, we have funding to move you to a new space, or bad news, we need this space for other needs, we need you to move, take it as your opportunity that you now get to have a Rorschach of everybody's worst traits when they're stressed out. Okay. And if you've received this yourself, watch out for your own worst tendencies to come out as well. So think about yourself first, and then think about how you can help your people. Now, why could they be stressed out even if it's good news? Well, I mentioned that list of like 50 marriages on there, moving is on there, having a baby is on there. All of that stuff is technically good news. Getting a new job is good news, but you know, good stress still is stress, right? Still is stress. And when it comes to like moving space, people get very territorial about what they think is theirs. And unlike a house, where sometimes we actually do own it, within an organization, even though the organization technically owns the space, because many people negotiate for the space they have, especially in the academic world, over time, they think it's theirs and no one can touch it. Not true, but that's how they see it. And they also see the situation as, I negotiated for this. I worked hard for this. This was my recognition. You can't take that from me. I bring money to the university. You can't take it from me, right? Or I need to hold on to this space so I'm ready for when that one big grant hits and I can hire more people, right? So people's space is a proxy for how they see their value, recognition in the eyes of other people, other important people, and so many other things tied to emotions about self-worth and success, right? Even though it's not their house, it's kind of the same thing, since they work there in that space most of their days and lives, right? Okay, so we're reaching an ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. When we come back, we'll talk about like what she was seeing, what was coming out, what were the behaviors that she was very concerned about, and what she wanted help with and how we helped her. We'll be right back in a moment, and you're welcome to ask any questions or share anything in the live chat. We'll see you in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. We've been talking through a client scenario of a change process focused on moving people's space and what comes out, the stressors that come out related to that. So Gloria, our client, my client, was dealing with a few people who were really bringing out some rough traits: entitlement, passive aggressiveness, narcissism. You see it all come out in these moments. Now, Gloria, I mentioned she's a seasoned leader and she did all of the right things in managing it. But she did wonder, number one, is there any way I can do a better job dealing with this one person, John, who seems to just escalate it so much? And number two, more generally, how do I stick to what makes logical sense when I feel so bad for people when they're coming to me so upset about this? So her concern was less about the logistics or even the strategy, which was already very well thought out. It was really more about people management. And isn't it always? I mean, if you were to move, I don't know, tortoises or fish from one place to another, this wouldn't be an issue, okay? But humans are territorial. They settle into a place and then they design the place to be an image of their value and identity. And then they show it off to others. That's part of who they are. And I'm not sure most other species are this obsessed with value and identity, but it is part of human life. And so we can't ignore it as leaders if we want to be effective and supportive of the humans we lead and their needs, right? So we discussed the importance of two things. One, knowing your people and prepping for what they need of you. And two, knowing where you stop and they start, so you don't overpromise or sabotage your efforts. So I'm going to explain what all of this means. Let's first look at knowing your people and prepping them for based on like what you know about them. We know from change management principles that every person will have a different reaction to change. Remember in this episode, earlier in this episode, I mentioned the analogy of moving, like literally moving locations from one place to another. I often use that analogy because it's very relatable, right? So imagine you have 4 people in a household: a grandma, a son, a daughter, a mom. And the mom got a great promotion, but that means moving to a new state, changing houses, location, schools, community. It's going to affect every person, but differently. One child might find this super exciting because they always wanted a bigger room and finally they get a bigger room. One child might find this devastating because they lose their friends. They're a year out from going to college. They have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and this is devastating to them. The grandparent might feel they're not going to be able to establish a new community, new routines, their healthcare that they need in this new place, and they're worried. Instead of fighting or defending your position, Like if you are the parent in that family, instead of fighting or defending your position, like this is going to be great for us and this is so awesome and like you're going to get this and I'm going to get this and I'm going to have more money for this, which is what most people do. They try to convince, they try to persuade, they try to influence. You've got to always start with listening and validating and hearing concerns, because those concerns are real and they're legitimate. So going back to like having a high performing faculty or other employees, right? If you have a high performing faculty member worried about the impact on their grants and keeping their recognition of their work, and how hard it was to negotiate in the first place to have that kind of space, for example, the first step is to talk it through. What is your greatest worry? How can we address and minimize that worry, given that we need to make these moves, right? What can we do to try to make this fair across faculty members, but within constraints? Here's the criteria I'm using. What can I do with this criteria and your constraints to help? I'd love to work with you on this. I'd like to partner with you. Now, it's up to them whether they feel they can trust you and agree to work together with you within those constraints, or if they choose to still lean on their stress response, but at least you have offered them a one-on-one opportunity to explore it. Now, you don't have to offer one-on-one opportunities to every single person, but if you know somebody has a stress response around space or other sort of visible proprietary experiencing things, then those are the people that you want to reach out to and bring them in sooner. Okay, so that's one way of knowing your people and prepping, right? We talked about her first question. Is there any way I can do a better job dealing with this one person, John, who seems to just escalate it? Most people escalate because they don't feel like they can successfully address their concern in any other way. They don't know if they have a window of opportunity. They don't know that you are ready and willing and open to discuss it. And so you want to sort of preemptively let them know that there is a window there. You've opened the door and you want to talk it through. Okay. Now, what about her broader question? How do I stick to what makes logical sense about the space? Like deciding the amount of space per, new faculty versus seasoned faculty, those who bring in more grants versus less grants, those who need more equipment versus less equipment, all of those things, right? But how do you stick to that logical stuff when you feel bad for people when they're coming in upset, right? They're in their feelings about it. And Gloria added, I feel like this is something I see women struggling with more than men. Is that true? If so, why? How can I let go of that? Now, on the outside, she did very well. Okay. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating. She's a very seasoned, successful leader. So on the outside, I feel like she did very well. So often this is more of an inside job. And yes, for many, many women, we are socialized to take on this sort of persona of caring for people, nurturing them, not causing harm, not causing discomfort. That said, there are many men who aren't necessarily socialized in this way, but are simply empathetic people. So this next part just applies to anybody who might be a high achiever, results oriented, but also empathizes and cares about their impact and cares about others. And of course, this is a great characteristic to have, right? It's a great characteristic for leaders to have, most of the time focused on supporting other people, but it can cause some inner tension when you have to deliver hard news and hold yourself or others accountable to sticking to it. So for people who have a lot of empathy, delivering tough news or hard feedback can range anywhere from, oh, this is stressful, challenging, all the way to excruciatingly painful, which can lead to avoiding the topic or white knuckling it. Now, neither is ideal, though, frankly, if you white knuckle through enough times, it is like exposure therapy. You can get better and better, and the stress lowers over time as you get better at it. But there are ways to lean into your empathy strengths while doing this in order to make the feedback giving easier. There are also other contextual issues that you should be looking at for feedback readiness, and I will get to that in just a moment. The best way to start with that conversation is start with an empathy sentence. Start with an empathy sentence, followed by sharing a little bit of your own fear or desire to avoid the conversation as a little vulnerable moment, and then get into it. Okay? So this is what it sounds like. I feel like I need to have an important discussion with you that might leave you pretty disappointed or frustrated, which I know is not great timing given how you just shared with me. Your mother is in the hospital and it's adding a lot of stress and worry. So I'm not pleased to have to get into this right now. And as much as I really, really wanted to find a good reason to just put it off or avoid it, I also don't think that would be in your best interest or that would be at all helpful to you. And I know that what you don't want is for me to sort of like get patronizing or overprotective when there's information that you need to know. So here's what's going on. Okay. So after that, don't sugarcoat it. Just be straight with people because most people appreciate it. And most people will, once they hear that preemptive stuff, they'll appreciate that you made efforts to think through the impact that this could have on them and that you were like really trying to be intentional about what they needed and that you were trying to empower them with information and not overwhelm them. But at the same time, you were sort of working through like how to do it in the best way. And then whatever feelings they have, the next most important thing is to not absorb their feeling. Those feelings are theirs. They do not belong to you. And you are not responsible for taking someone's feelings and hiding their feelings or babying their feelings or smoothing away their feelings or anything. But you can be of great help sitting with them, coaching them, or mentoring them about how to manage the feelings that they have about the information you just shared. And that sounds like this. Yes, I am sure that it is incredibly difficult to hear this. What would be helpful? Let them guide what to do with their feelings. And if they stand up and slam the door or shut off Zoom, that is them dealing the best that they can with their feelings. You still did the best you can. You can't take those feelings and hold on to them for somebody else. This is all technically about understanding where you stop and someone else starts, and then setting boundaries about what makes sense for you to take on or not. It's where some of us were not trained well enough on how to be understandable, understanding, supportive, helpful, empathetic, yet not accept responsibility for someone else's feelings or taking on someone else's burden. You can hold on to your strength of empathy without allowing it to suffocate you. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for now because we're reaching an ad break. When we come back, let's talk about one tool that I can offer you to take with you to work through some of this. It's going to be called a feedback readiness checklist. When we come back from the break, I'll talk about that. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and I'll be right back in just a moment.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and we're talking about helping clients with change management and specifically kind of the second part of my client scenario, which is focused on kind of identifying where you and your feelings and your contribution to an interaction stops and someone else's contribution and feelings and needs and responsibility starts. And that's all about boundary setting and identifying kind of the differentiation between individuals, right? And not taking on someone else's, not accepting responsibility for someone else's feelings or taking on someone else's burden to the point of allowing it to suffocate you or hamstring you, right? Now, whether your challenge is too much empathy or too much focus on results with not enough empathy or something else, one thing that I would like to share with you that might be useful is a feedback readiness checklist. It's one of the many activities that we have in our new workbook for navigating workplace politics. And this is part of chapter 21, which is all focused on feedback giving and receiving, which I think is one of the greatest challenges most leaders have, or at least one of the things they seek coaching for often, right? Here is how the chapter starts. A lot of the problems that we struggle with related to workplace politics are related to our difficulty giving and receiving feedback. Giving feedback is a common source of difficulty because it typically reminds us of the bad experiences we've had when it goes wrong. Without feedback, problems go unaddressed and continue to fester, serving as embers waiting to fuel conflict. Feedback can be used as a mechanism for constructive action once you have done your due diligence by surveying and clarifying the root of the potential conflict. So the chapter works you through like identifying, surveying, clarifying the root of the potential conflict. And then there's a third activity in there after you do those things, which is a checklist to help you determine feedback readiness. An important step is to evaluate how ready you are to have a feedback discussion. So the goal is to review the criteria for effective feedback in the feedback readiness checklist. Think of a current scenario and consider whether it's ready for prime time, ready for feedback giving. And then consider whether there are actually additional steps you need to take first in order to create the right setting for effective feedback to occur. If you want to access that checklist, I got permission from the publisher and the co-authors to make it freely available. So you just go to gotowerscope.com under other free stuff. I'm going to share my screen for those of you who are able to visually see this and just walk you through using audio for those of you who are not able to see this. So go towerscope.com. You can do go towerscope.com /other-free-stuff, or just go towerscope.com, go under resources, and go under other free stuff. Okay. And under other free stuff, you scroll down and look for the checklist right here. Okay. And you will sign up to receive it for free. Signing up does mean that you're signing up for my newsletter. You can always unsubscribe, but sign up to receive it for free. And if you're listening to this like several months from now, like from today's airing, it is possible that I end up moving it to my book section, right? Because this is related to my new book. I have not added the new book to my book section of my website. My assistant Maria is helping me right now to add that. Right now, it only has the Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics, but it doesn't have the workbook in there. But until we move it over there, it's going to be located under other free stuff. We might, keep it in both sections. Okay. All right. So what you will see, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to quickly share the what you'll see. And again, I'm just going to describe it. So it's going to be the feedback readiness checklist. And it starts off by describing a little bit about why you use feedback readiness checklist, why you don't just jump right into feedback giving. And then it'll have a checklist and you, score it 1 to 5 for each item, not at all ready, somewhat ready, completely ready. And that will give you insight into what to do next. Okay. So I'm super excited to share that with you. And I'll be really curious to hear what you think about this. Okay. So we talked about 2024 and insights that I've had and, kind of the reflections that I do at the end of the year and how you can do that for yourself as well. We talked about how I hold myself, accountable and how I can be transparent as a business owner to my constituents and stakeholders who are interested in the social impact of my company and how you can do that as well. And we talked about how to think about one example of a change management process where you're not just thinking about like the actual change, which the actual change is not change management. That's project management, right? That's the logistical part. But change management is more about like the people side. Why is this one person escalating things? How do I stick to a consistent communication? How do I balance my worry, my concern for people who are upset about this change, given that I'm an empathetic person? How do I deal with that? We talked about boundary setting. We talked about prepping for feedback. We talked about preemptive conversations, lots and lots of things. Okay. Hopefully you will get at least one takeaway from today. And if and when you do, please share it with us on LinkedIn, which is where I live. You can share it any other place that I have an account. There's lots of places, but LinkedIn is where I live. I would love to hear your one takeaway and what you'll do with it. What's the one thing that you will change about your change management processes? Right? Okay. If you want to keep learning and growing with me, I am a leadership consulting and coaching psychologist. And I bring many, many years and lots of expertise. I'm an associate professor, a Psychology Today columnist. I've had my own leadership career before transitioning to helping teams and high achieving women navigate their own leadership complexities. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, like I mentioned, or team or group coaching, or with the TowerScope Leadership Academy, or any other way in terms of advising and consulting, reach out to me. Find me on gotowerscope.com. There's a link where you can just schedule some time with me to just talk it through. And if I think that I can help you, I will kind of describe how and what the cost would be and what that would look like and the investment and all of that stuff. And if I don't feel like I can help you, I will refer you, or I could recommend resources or point you to, other options, right? So I love working, especially with organizational misfits and socially conscious, growth-oriented, high-achieving women leaders in disrupted industries looking to find their leadership path and make a greater impact. My company offers research-based programs to help leaders and teams avoid being blindsided by missteps, workplace politics, or problematic team dynamics, gain more clarity and agency to become more effective leaders. And if you're interested in working with me, go to gotowerscope.com. The best way to track all these opportunities is also to subscribe to the newsletter, which is also an option on that website, okay? So in addition to being a live show, we're on iTunes or Apple Podcast, they call it now, Spotify, so many other places. Go subscribe, leave a review, share with others to help increase our visibility, reach, and impact. Thank you to talkradio.nyc for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, your host of the Hard Skill Show. Have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you, everyone. Bye.